The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Welcome along, Football Show. Very happy to say Kenny Cunningham is still with us. Good evening again.
Evening, Joe.
Great to have you with us. You're at the Aviva Stadium last night, as is your usual when you're working for the other crowd. You tend to blank me and Nathan Murphy, even though we're only sitting yards away.
That's in most social situations, Joe. Let's be honest, that's not just when we come phones with the Aviva.
Even though we sit beside RTE at every game, every time you turn and look at me and say, "Oh, you're here.
Taste.
You're here, are you?" Yeah, I'm here for every game.
It's Jenny, the clubber you're making, really. You're wearing at the time. You takes me breath away.
Turned into a more interesting game than we thought, didn't it? My, oh my.
Oh, it was amazing, wasn't it? It just goes to show you football. You know, we say it, don't we, with the old cliche, you know, just when you think you've got it worked out and nothing can surprise you, then just kind of blows you away. I mean, nobody within the confines of the stadium or watching at home could have envisaged that kind of turnaround second half. You know, sometimes you get a little bit of a sense of opposition, gets a bit of the ball and threatens you a little bit, and you think, oh, you just got to be careful. It's none of that, was there? It's like total control, wasn't it? You're just thinking, go on, lads, third, fourth, push on, finish strongly. And when I say that, I don't mean like cavalier, you know, throw players forward, kind of willy-nilly stuff. Let's not show these any respect or useless. I mean, let's push players forward, but at the same time, you know, make sure we're set the other end as well. So that's what I was expecting going into the last kind of 20 minutes. I was looking at the players thinking, come on, let's push, let's keep pushing, keep the tempo up, and let's go and hunt a few more goals. So yeah. So a slight surprise.
Oh, it was. As you said, it wasn't even like, oh, we've handed them the initiative for 2 minutes in the build to the goal. It was...
Yeah, from nowhere, wasn't it?
Out of nowhere. Stephen Kenny, afterwards, I went to his press conference, and generally he said the performance was exceptional, and he said it was just 5 minutes of madness. And he mentioned he didn't like the shape of the back three for the first breakaway goal, and he said we'll learn from these things, but on the whole, just one of those strange things that happens in football. But in the main, happy with the performance. A lot of good things in the performance. 5 minutes of madness. And on the face of it, I see where he's coming from. I mean, there is an argument that's what it was. Or is it more serious?
You need to break that down. As a long statement you made there. I thought there was some good aspects of the performance. No, I wouldn't go along with it exceptional, to be honest with you. I thought, I'd have to say that. I thought the first half I was actually a bit disappointed in the first half performance, because we dominated the ball. But there is a caveat there in terms of our ball possession, in terms of how we dominated. The fact is Armenia just dropped off and let us have the ball. I think that's different, Joe. Big difference, team coming at you, pressing you all over the pitch, you know, and you're keeping the ball off and working clever little angles and 1-2 touch pass, and that's really impressive. But when a team drops off into a deep defensive block and basically hands you the ball, you know, I don't think you can go trumping the fact where we're dominating the ball here, particularly when you're a little bit conservative in your pass. And that's the problem that I had. I thought we got in some reasonable areas, the areas where you want to get 10-15 yards into their half the pitch for a lot of that first half. But the next pass for me just wasn't good enough, wasn't positive, it wasn't a forward pass.
It seemed more often than not the one player who was trying to make a telling pass in that final third was Jeff Hendrick, and they didn't come off for him.
No, it wasn't that for me. It was more of a collective thing. So I'd be a big fan of playing two up the pitch, and we're playing three, kind of 5-2 at the moment. So for me, that's fine. 4-4-2, whatever it is. I've always been a huge fan since I've played, and even since I've stopped playing, of having two players up the pitch for different reasons, just in terms of in possession and out possession, actually getting a press on early. But in possession, I like it because when in our system that we're playing at the moment, when our three midfielders get the ball, where wing backs get the ball in reasonably advanced areas, which they got a lot of the balls, particularly first half. Even our wide defensive players, Nathan Collins getting himself forward on Darragh Shane occasion. When you look up the pitch and look to hit the front man, you got two targets. You got two targets up the pitch, operating, generally speaking, about 15 yards apart from each other. And that's reasonably unusual. In the modern game, when you look up, you're usually looking at lone central striker, and generally speaking, that player's not easy to find. Decent defensive screen in front of him, kind of, you know, compact defensive block. Not easy to thread balls or punch balls into the feet of a lone central striker. But we've got two of them. So for me, when we get the ball and get turned and we're looking at the opposition goal in the opposition half the pitch, it's only got to be one thing on our mind, whether it's a wing back, whether it's one of our central midfield three or defenders. Can I find the feet of the front man? And too often last night we passed up the opportunity to punch that ball into the centre forward's feet, because when you do it, those two centre forwards at the gateway, if they can receive the ball into feet, give or take 25-30 yards from the opposition goal, and make that ball stick, well, then a whole huge opportunities open up for the team. Then you've got your midfield three joining in. Third man runs, going beyond that player in possession. He can feed the wing backs in a wide area across in the box. You can get a bit of link up play between the front two. You know, little ball around the corner, a little bit of link up play, maybe shot on target. So everything opens like a Pandora's box. But you've got to get that ball into the centre forward's feet, and we didn't do it enough. It was almost a default position where we came out, we played a sideways pass back to the centre midfielder. Another sideways pass, delivered it out to the wing back on the other side of the pitch, and basically ended up in a similar position on the other side of the pitch where we were kind of 10-15 seconds previously. Yes, we completed 5-6 passes in the meantime. We've kept the ball away from the opposition.
We haven't pierced their bubble.
Oh, excuse me, Joe, apologise for that. Thought that was off.
Just excuse Kenny Cunningham. It's his first time in a radio studio, so.
Nobody phones me.
Who phoned you? Private number. Who could it be?
Joe, I never answer them.
Who could it be?
I never answer them. Let me switch the volume totally down. But
so your point is, we stayed very much outside their bubble. We'd go from one side to the other. It was conservative. I did, in fairness, I stand by the point. Hendrick tried a few forward little passes here and there. It didn't come off for him. Malumbi in particular was very safe.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, don't get me wrong. There was some good. Jeff was punching in terms of in those little inside right channels, and likewise Jason Knight, which I liked. Our wing backs were getting the ball wide, stretching their back five a little bit. Little pockets of space were open up those inside channels, and it was kind of Jeff Knight who were breaking in there. I actually thought they were breaking in there too often. For me, I'd been encouraging them to hold their runs and actually leave that space there, so our wings back could actually fire balls into the feet of the fourth centre forward. Then they could go join in.
That's a good point, because I was going to say to you, because I totally had the same thought watching the games yourself, but it did strike me, in fairness to some of our midfielders at times, they would get the ball, they would look up. It was quite congested in front of Parrott and Obafemi, and so you're saying maybe we congested.
Yes, I think sometimes Jason and Jeff Hendricks last, when our wing backs got the ball in wide areas, stay behind the ball and leave that pocket of space in front for Michael Obafemi or Troy Parrott to drift across the pitch, pin an opposition centre half, and say to Matt Doherty or Robbie Breda, forward into me now. Forward into me. I'm pinning me centre half. Let me have it into me feet. Now, Jeff, come on and play with me. Come on, run past me. I'll flick this one around the corner. Now you're in.
Don't crowd the space early.
Yeah, don't crowd the space early. And it's give or take. Don't get me wrong. Occasionally that one, but just mixed it up. But I didn't see enough of that. And I saw Troy Parr a little bit frustrated, not getting the ball into his feet. I think, to be honest with you, Michael Obafemi in particular was a little bit slow getting across and offering himself up. I saw Robbie Brady a couple of times look to play the ball around the corner. There wasn't a centre forward there. And he threw his hands up and played a backwards pass. He was a little bit frustrated. So that surprises me, that there wasn't like clear pictures there, clear information for the players to say, once we get to a certain area, let's hit our centre forward. Let's hit our centre forward. That's where we want to be. Central area, 30 yards from the goal, and let's go and join in. Things really open up and present themselves to us from there. So that was a frustration point for me at half time. Yeah, it was decent enough. We controlled, but all the possession we had, Joe, we got the goal set piece. I can't remember a clear-cut chance.
So jot it down. Remind you. So look, I guess the opening 20 minutes are okay. There was on 10 minutes, Jason Knight put in that good cross for Obafemi.
Yeah, Michael, just over his head, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was one where 13 minutes ball goes into Parrott in the area, and there's like a slight opening, but not really, and it goes out for a corner. There's the Darragh O'Shea header across goal, and Egan gets his head to it. 16 minutes just before the goal, Matt Doherty does brilliantly down the right hand side,
chops it back inside,
and that leads to the corner. That's the goal. So on 20 minutes there's enough happening, but I jotted down on my notes from about 22 minutes to 35 minutes I just wrote down meh, and it was very meh. There was no chance created. It was just, as you said, everything outside of Armenia.
That's frustrating for me because there's no reason for that. And people say like kind of risk in terms of your risk taking. Now risk taking, there's one thing taking a risk 5 yards outside your penalty box, playing a ball into your centre, holding midfielder with pressure in behind. But there's a whole world of difference between risk in terms of your passing when you're punching a ball into the feet, your centre forward who's 10 yards outside the opposition penalty box, and we've got the majority of the team in good defensive positions in behind the ball. That's low risk, Joe. That's as low risk you're going to get. No way should any team be breaking out from that position, and counter-attacking and putting the ball into your net. So that, for me, there's low risk attached to those passes. And I just feel we suffer because if we're talking about being a creative team, a team which creates chances and scores goals, etc. Well, how are we going to do that? We've got to get into the final third more often and get more sustained pressure on the opposition team. We've got to force them back into their penalty box.
I did want to ask you, and I did wonder, especially once they got the early goal, was there a degree of, God, this is nice, just having the ball and we're all getting touches and I'll send it over to you and you send it back, and almost you forget that you need to keep on being creative. Like there was a degree of we're enjoying being a possession-based team at home here.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, Joe. I can't believe the Dorish lads. This is Armenia were playing last night. I can't believe the mentality was we're a goal up, let's just sit on that. We're happy
not
to
sit on it. Everyone's enjoying getting their touches and moving the ball around because they were moving.
I'd hope not, Joe. I would have thought there's enough intelligence on the pitch, enough experience on the pitch to know, look, we're 1-0 up, but let's keep put. You can't be enjoying that last night. We've got some tidy footballers on the pitch. I'm sure Troy Parrott wasn't enjoying the fact that every time our wing backs got the ball and he presented himself, give it into me feet. I think I can do something here. The ball got played back to Jason Malumbi, the centre mid. He couldn't have been enjoying that. Even our kind of back three to a certain degree. Now Nathan Collins done great, I thought, in that kind of wide three position. That was interesting because he played so well over in Ukraine, like century to the three, then he got that kind of spectacular goal. But it was interesting watching him play right for three, because in that position you can actually get forward a bit more.
Stephen Kenny made that point in the press conference that you can be like an overlapping centre half more. If you've Egan centrally,
either side, a little bit more responsibility. They got to show a little bit more of this. But I think actually John Egan enjoys that a little bit more. So I like the balance of that kind of back three. John actually in the middle and Nathan on the right hand side, and that's for me one of the positives. Not so much last night, I thought to a degree, but the last few games, just in terms of that balance we've had and that back three, it looks really good to me. Andrew Omo Bamadiele has to come back in. He's going to push strong as well. And we're not even mentioning the likes of kind of Shane Duffy, even Seamus Coleman, who at one stage was playing right at that three. So that's testament to the performances those lads have put in. And I think we look kind of solid there. We look kind of mobile, quite sharp over the ground. The three lads are very comfortable in possession of the ball in terms of travelling forward. We saw that with Nathan Collins. Darryl Shea to a point, not naturally left-sided, you could argue maybe, but he's still prepared to drive in there and punch a pass forward. John Egan, very comfortable on the ball as well. I think that's a big thing as well. I think that'd be one reason why Shane might find it hard to get back into the team, because we know the huge qualities that Shane has, but in terms of his ball playing ability, he probably wouldn't be his strongest suit, and that's where the other players have the edge on him. So I'm really pleased with that in terms of how that's evolved, the kind of the back three. I think what we saw last night in Josh Cullen's absence in central midfield, in terms of how much we did miss him, but what we've had previously in terms of in the midfield three, we've had real kind of physicality, we've had legs, high energy in there, dynamism, and I'm talking about Josh Cullen, Jason Malumbi and Jason Knight, that three in the previous games, and it's really helped us in there. I think this system that we play, they don't get too much help from the flanks, those three, so they really get pushed and dragged across the pitch, and you need legs. You need to be fit to do it. You need to be able to drive 20, 30 yards, particularly the two wide lads, Jason Knight and Jason Malumbi. They've got to drive out and confront opposition, full-backs, wing-backs, double up with our wing-backs at times, get back in on the inside as well, drive out themselves, and they do that really well because they have legs, they have physicality. They're so fit. Jason Knight in particular amazes me. He got taken off last night, but I didn't see any drop off in his physio, his levels, his fitness levels, and that's fantastic, and that's good. So I think.
Do you, by the way, do you prefer that system where it's Malumbi and Knight going out to engage with their fullbacks as opposed to the likes of either Brady or McLean and Doherty pushing on?
Well, it's not one or the other. I think at various stages, depending on the situation in the game. Sometimes the easy thing is to keep your back five intact, keep your two wing backs in contact with your three central defenders, and that's ideally where every defender wants to be. That's where you're most comfortable. Very little distance between the back five defenders. The problem with that is you open up space for the opposition full-backs or wing backs to travel with the ball unopposed, and what happens then is, you're right, Jason Malumbi or Jason I, on whichever side of the pitch it is, has to drive out and confront them, but that takes a bit of time, 2-3 seconds, by which stage the opposition wing back full-back has travelled 10-20 yards with his head up and is in a position to make a pass. Not, that's fine, you just have to give up a little bit of ground.
Every system has a weakness.
Yeah, but the bolder thing to do, of course, is to keep your midfield three intact and actually send your wing backs up the pitch. And by doing that, where you're saying you're putting a bit more onus now in your back three, you're asking Nathan Collins now to slide across into an orthodox right back position, and everybody else has got to slide across.
That back three feel like they have the speed and the nous now to maybe do
so that's
that.
a good thing. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. It's not as if we're looking at back three slow coaches back there where we're saying to our wing backs, you can't jump out, you've got to stay, we've got to protect this back three.
Any centre halves might have been screaming at you, stay home.
Yeah, absolutely. We've all experienced it without a doubt, but thankfully we haven't got that problem. That's a good thing. So I'd like to see us do that a little bit more, just push our two wing backs a bit higher up the pitch,
especially against Armenia.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not just Armenia, that's any team. And you'll see other teams, the 3-5-2 is, we're not alone in terms of playing that system. A lot of international teams are. And you'll see it very often. A lot of the managers are very kind of bold in terms of throwing their full wing backs high up the pitch. And even if it's like 20-30 yards in advance, those kind of back three, because they have confidence in those back three to be able to deal in 1v1 situations.
Against Scotland, they didn't budge, but maybe that's fair enough away at Hampden Park that you stay at home.
Well, yeah, I suppose it's the situation. If you're 2-0 up and you're not kind of chasing the game, why take that maybe small risk in terms of sending your wing backs high up the pitch? But if you're a goal down and you're chasing the game, you have to do it. Like, you know what I mean?
Flexible.
But so that's the beauty of the system to a certain extent. And by sending your wing backs up, you're keeping yourself nice and compact in the middle of the pitch. Those three central midfield players. There shouldn't be any easy ball onto the inside because you've got your numbers in there as well. So that's been that's interesting. That'll evolve, and what'll help us in that is that back three unit. Like I've said, they look confident, they look quick over the ground. Good defenders in there as well. Ball distribution is very good. So that's been one of the pluses since the summer for me, the evolution of that kind of back three and that midfield three. I like it. So last night we lost Josh. We brought Jeff in. We know Jeff's ball playing ability, but he doesn't bring that kind of physicality and dynamism, that kind of defensive smarts, whatever you kind of want to call it, that Josh Cullen has. Jason Malumbi went in there. I thought he'd done okay, but not quite as disciplined maybe as Josh Cullen, that kind of central midfield role. And obviously Jeff kind of leans to the right hand side, and it's going to be a big ask for him in terms of all of that running that we're talking about.
To fast forward to their first goal for a moment, so fingers are being pointed at Hendrick and the way Armenia and their goalkeeper kind of beat the press so easily with that ball rolled out. But I suppose the other gaping hole is in the centre circle. Would Josh Cullen have been sitting there, do you think, if he was playing? That, Hendrick, that's going to happen. A keeper rolls it out by Hendrick. Horan's out there because he swung in the cross. You want Josh Cullen there.
Yeah, so this is interesting for me. So I wouldn't be overly critical of Jeff in that position. It was a cross came into the box with committed players into the box. Alan Brown was a little bit advanced, as you would expect. That's where you want to throw him into the box. Conor Horan actually put the cross into the box. So now Jeff being the whole midfielder, you could say he's a little bit isolated in that central area of the pitch. Keeper's thrown it out quick. But if you noticed, he kind of have a decision to make. He's kind of in between two of the Armenian players. And in that situation, you've got to think quick. And this is what I'm talking about. Players with kind of natural defensive mindset, generally speaking, will make the right decision. The right decision is you stick with the deepest opposition player. He's more of a threat.
Yeah.
Even that means giving up the ball to their deeper.
Yeah.
Let him have the ball and buy a bit of time for everybody else, for Conor Horan to get back in, Alan Brown and everybody to get it. You might have to give up maybe 15, 20, 25 yards in the pitch before you go and re-engage him, but that's what you do. Just looked a little bit. Jeff didn't he wasn't even totally switched off. He just got himself caught in between, allowed that ball to be played beyond them. And once that ball is played, now it's kind of almost a domino effect. Now Nathan Collins has to make a decision. Do I spring out and go and engage him, or do I drop off and buy time? I think you drop off and buy time if you think one of your recovering defenders is going to get back in contact with that player in possession quickly. I don't think that was going to happen. Jeff was wrong side, Conor was wrong. So I don't think they were going to get back.
Harrihan was trying, but he probably wasn't getting
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what do? I've been there a million times myself. The easy option is to stay, retreat, and in 4 or 5 seconds you're on the edge of your box. And then you're thinking, I've got to fly out now and get a block. Nathan made the decision, going to step out and engage him earlier, make a pass, which is what he did. He made the pass out to the winger who was in a kind of 1v1 situation with Darragh O'Shea. So now you're looking at Darragh thinking, just slow him up. Can you slow him up? Is he right foot or left foot? Can you assess him quickly? Do you want to show him the line? You're going to allow him on the inside? Are you showing him into traffic on the inside? All of these things, have to commute these things very quickly in your head. Now the lad done well, shifted onto his left foot and got the shot off, and we know what happened. But for me, if you're asking me, I wouldn't be any of those players. I wouldn't hang any of the Irish players on the goal. All I'd say in that moment when their keeper got the ball and looked up the pitch, Jeff, having been left isolated there, had a decision to make. And for me, if you have that natural defensive mindset, generally speaking, you get those decisions right in terms of where you position yourself.
Weird atmosphere in the stadium then, and they score so quickly again, and Harrihan makes his mistake, and these things sort of happen. A slightly bigger picture question, that kind of vulnerability, 5 minutes of madness as Stephen Kenny calls it. Others, I'll play Damien Delaney in a few moments' time, but like this sense of a frailty in this team, and like when are the learnings going to stop? To concede so quickly and in the manner they did, that is just a worry that we take into next March.
Yeah, I don't think you can broaden that out into this a collective kind of weakness. It was an individual error from kind of as simple as that. We've all made him, and he's one of our most experienced players. Like, so he would have held his hand up, and that's it. We've got to accept it. Don't think you can broaden that out into this is a real collective ill, like a mindset. This is it's throughout the team.
You can't conflate Luxembourg's loss, the Yerevan loss, with that Harrihan mistake. That's too much.
No, I think that's too easy. I think you have to analyse each particular game and each particular situation.
Well, then what we have is,
and that was simple for me.
What we have is a manager. Then, if you take Saturday in Hampden and you think of Matt Doherty, or you think of the Brown penalty and you think of Harrihan last night, you have a manager, and who knows why these things happen in football. You get in certain momentum's a funny thing, but being let down a touch by these individual mistakes that you'd look at in isolation and say, well, that's probably not going to happen again. You know, he'll do better next time, and it's just unfortunate there.
Yeah, so I don't worry about that, the kind of mistake. I don't even worry about the Jeff mistake, because what I'm saying, probably now Jeff's been a wonderful servant to us, and so has Conor, but we know the qualities which they have in terms of their ball playing ability, technical abilities. So for me, when I look at this system going forward and potentially next March and see, is this system going to be 3-5 to be successful for us, and can we get better at it? I think we can. There's more scope and improvement to come, but I think we have to get the right players in the right areas of the pitch. And for me, that midfield three at the moment, there's no room for Conor or Jeff Hendrick. It has to be a trio of Malumbi, Cullen, Knight. I'd throw Alan Brown into the equation as well in there. I think it would have been very interesting if the 21s hadn't had a game the other night and Josh Cullen coming out, because for me Conor Coventry would have been the obvious replacement in there. I've seen him play quite a bit for the under 21s, very similar ilk to Josh Cullen, very disciplined in that kind of holding midfield position, reads the game very well, positions himself very well, gets on the ball, keeps it simple, just keeps it ticking over. So he's a player potentially who could step into that little trio of players. But almost to play in there for me in this system which we have at the moment, you've got to have certain attributes. It's got to be like speed, energy levels, physicality, that type of thing, because it's not just out of possession those things help. For me, it's in possession, not so much in terms of dictating the game, but in terms of how effective we can be as a counter-attacking team, and that's going to be massive. We saw a bit of that in the game against Scotland. So for me, we've got to accept the fact, and there was a big lot of talk, possession, ball possession percentage, how much possession that we have. I don't worry about that, doesn't interest me. I think we can be a very good and effective counter-attacking team. I think we can qualify for the next European Championships being the team which has 35-40% possession of the football. That's enough for me, for us to be competitive and actually qualify as one of the top two teams, because I think we can be very effective counter-attacking team because of that kind of pace and dynamism which you have in centre midfield, the likes of Malumbi and Jason Knight breaking out and getting forward, and also, which we haven't spoken about too much, in terms of the attributes of that front two pairing. Can we get enough pace up there as well, which we saw in Scotland? The breakout from Obafemi that second half when the game was in the balance. Yes, they were dominating. Yes, we were getting penned in, but at the same time, even in Scotland, I was looking at thinking, yeah, we're getting pushed back here, we're getting pushed back. There's a bit of concern, but at the same time, I was thinking, you know what? If we do this right, we can pick these off. And we nearly did.
We nearly did. So Obafemi's done his thing, and you have to say, well, that's very encouraging. I was frustrated by Parrott last night.
Yeah, maybe so, but I've been impressed from the previous couple of games.
His touch, though, was...
Yeah, I'd say the same, though, about Obafemi last night. His touch let him down a little bit as well. I think that's an area of the game he has to improve upon as well.
Yeah, I guess a goal almost kind of salvaged that, but you're right. But they were just too... Like, who knows? Maybe some of the players at times thinking, well, I can fizz it into them. I don't trust them tonight to almost get hold of it the way they should at times, because
I didn't get it.
Their touches were off.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, but that hasn't been Troy. The last couple of games, I've been impressed with him going back to the summer. The Scotland game, wasn't it? That was the change, wasn't it, Joe? For me, the Scotland game when
June.
Yeah, Stephen dropped in that extra player in midfield into that narrow midfield three and got the front two up front. And the attributes of those three players in midfield, that's for me when it changed. We hit upon something. That's when I looked at it and thought, yeah, there's a potential. Like, there's a chink of light here. There's a way forward for us here.
You think he's sharper usually than he was last night, maybe on the ball?
Yeah, I thought generally his overall game was very polished. I think it lends into what he's been saying. Listen to him probably similar to yourself in terms of going to MK Dons last year and really committing himself, kind of refocusing himself. He's gone up to press and getting game time up there. Hasn't scored a huge amount of goals, but look, I like what I'm hearing from him in terms of like real focus. Got to push myself. I want to become better and totally immerse myself. He's kind of rediscovered himself a little bit, that type of thing. And I think that's been reflected a little bit of performance. I like what I'm seeing with Troy. Would have been great for me to got that goal in Scotland. Amazing. That one goal I think would have almost taken him to another level, like taking maybe a little bit of pressure off his shoulders. But there's not too much pressure there. He's still a young player. He's still developing. But I like what I've seen. Yeah, a little bit of a drop off last night. I think you're right, Obafemi, great goal. But for me, you can make the same argument with him. I was disappointed. I was amazed really. Ogbene never got off the bench and got some serious.
Yeah, we checked in the press conference afterwards. Someone asked, by the way, was he fit?
Yeah, I mean,
and he was.
This lad is really impressive. So that's what I'm saying. I think we're still searching maybe for that combination up front, but I think that's quite exciting as well. That kind of pace that we have up from Troy's not like he's not a hair over the ground, but he can run in behind. He can stretch teams to a point. Obafemi, we know the pace he has. Ogbene's the same, isn't he? Adamida's going to come back into the equation as well. Callum Robinson's a little bit different, more of really number 10 who wants to come off the front and operate in the pockets, but he's still an option in there as well. So again, that's encouraging for me, but it blends into the argument of how we see ourselves. I'm not looking at those players like I'm talking about that midfield three in front two and thinking, yeah, this is a team that's going to dominate the ball. This is a team that's going to take the ball off the opposition and they won't be able to get it back off us. I'm looking at this team thinking this is a team which should be difficult to break down, give up very few chances, but offer a real threat on transitions and on counter-attack, can really hurt teams. And that's a huge set piece as well, throwing set piece as well. Robbie Brady's delivery last night into the box as well. Throw that in as well, a couple of goals there. For me, that's the ingredients of a team which can really compete and qualify from a qualifying group next year. Okay. I'm not searching for the holy grail of like
Samba
total
football.
Samba football. I don't think I'm looking at the players that we have available to us and I'm thinking, well, let's play to the strength of the players that we've got, and if we can do that and if you can rinse every little ounce out of those players, that's good enough for me. That'll get us where we want to go.
Okay, take a short break. Football and Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Back with Kenny Cunningham, just 1 second.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, it's the Manchester Derby. Watch City versus United on Super Sunday. Live, only on Sky Sports.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, it's the Manchester Derby. Watch City versus United on Super Sunday. Live, only on Sky Sports.
You're welcome back. Kenny Cunningham with us. We're reflecting on last night's 3-2 win against Armenia. Got to say, by the way, I'm quite glad this international window is over. They're intense. I don't want to talk about Ireland again for a little while. So we're in this interesting cycle at the moment where I would say maybe more of the critical pundits are on version, just for whatever reason. I was there on Saturday with Damon Delaney and Paul McShane, and Damon Delaney definitely wants results and wants to see, you know, enough talk about progress now. Let's start winning games. And Brian Kerr's been critical at times as well. And so we've had the games, and then I suppose in time we start seeing what the lads in Virgin are saying about the game afterwards as well. So just to give you a sense of what Damien Delaney was saying last night about the win, we'll have a listen. This was Damien, and he was on with Tommy Martin. Have a listen.
Look, does this raise questions about the manager again? Are we back to that sort of stuff after that performance tonight, or was that just a bizarre night and a weird last 20 minutes where just strange things happened?
No, strange things don't happen. This is a team that have 3 wins in 20 competitive games, right? They're in the box seat, and discipline, concentration went out the window. I mean, like, Stephen Kenny doesn't hold a patent on an Irish team playing football. There seems to be a theory out there that if we get rid of Stephen Kenny, we're going to go and get a Sam Allardyce and just realise, we've had a go at this, but we can't go any further. There are other managers that come in and get Ireland playing football. Nothing is to be celebrated tonight after that. I mean, that is the biggest get-out-of-jail-free card that we've ever got. I presume Stephen Kenny's got as a manager. That was shambolic, how we gave up a position of superiority like that with the ease which we got up, with the ease which we gave it up. I'm flabbergasted, really, that was even a discussion, you know? I mean, we're talking about progress and we're playing better football. We said it's about getting results, and yes, he got a result tonight, but by the skin of his teeth against a team ranked 92nd in the world.
Yeah.
92 in the world. Since they beat us in Yerevan, they lost all their games, conceded 14 and scored 1. And tonight, by the way, when it went to 2-2, they had a couple of half chances, and they were in the ascendancy. And then we get a penalty, and they completely turn the tide of the game. Seriously worrying times.
James Delaney there. I have to say, I'm not unsympathetic to that view either. Like, he makes points that are fair, you know. Shouldn't we be expecting a bit more against that Armenia side who, like, they were so limited?
Oh yeah, no, I don't agree with that. I've said that already. Wasn't it? Myself was a bit disappointed in the first half.
You weren't angry enough for me.
Oh, was that not cutting enough? Was it?
Yeah.
I thought it was a little bit better second half. It was nice moments, periods. I liked there's some good link-up play between Robbie Brady and Jason Knight down that left-hand side of the pitch. That was good to see. You know, some players just naturally kind of a little connection there straight away. Saw a little bit of that. Thought Robbie grew into the game.
But when we're making such hard work of this unbelievably average side, and they were, and I'm not don't be disrespectful to them, but being at the game,
but
you
that's
could really
agreed. Like, that's agreed.
Yeah,
you can't just keep banging that. But then you have to look at and dissect and see. I'd be worried if I was looking at that performance last night and saying and thinking that's the best we can do. Then I'd be worried. Then I'd be tearing my hair out. But I'm not. In some respects, I'm looking at performance thinking there's actually a lot more to come. Yeah, that wasn't great last night, but and it doesn't need like a revolution. Like, you're not asking players to do things that they're not capable of. Yeah. I'm asking players like to open up and punch a 15-yard pass into the centre forward's feet as opposed to a sideways or a backwards pass. You know, players are more than capable of doing that. So that encourages me a little bit. Of course, the longer it goes and you don't see, you get a little bit more frustrated to an extent. But it's still there for me. There's still improvement to come from the team. It has to come pretty quick. Don't get me wrong. We have our qualifiers next March.
To interrupt, that's Damien's point. I asked him on the Saturday after the Scotland game. I said, "Are you now confident of how we'll pitch up in March? Do you think we'll qualify for the European Championships based on what you've seen from the team thus far?" He said, "No."
No, well, I don't think you can say you can be confident. We're going to be third seed going into the group. We're going to have 2 seeded teams above us. So I don't think you can, without even before the draw has been made, say I'm confident we can qualify. Competitive, really, I think is probably more appropriate. Can we be competitive? And I think we can. I've given me reasons why in terms of potentially the personnel that I see on the pitch. Spoken about the back 3, that gives me confidence. That kind of midfield 3 in terms of the attributes we need in those 3 central midfield players. And I think we have them.
Is competitive about fair enough? Is that what we should be
expecting?
Yeah,
well, I think so. Yeah, but that's always been the case, isn't it?
Well,
I never remember being in an Ireland team and going into a qualifying campaign thinking we have to qualify. We're expected. We were always in that second, third tier. In there, not expected, but expecting to be competitive and to be in and around it, which we kind of generally were. So I think that's what that's where we need to get to be in the situation going into the last 2 games in the qualifying group for the next European Championships. Knowing we've got a fighting chance to get through. That's where we want. We haven't quite been there, have we, under Stephen so far? But that's where we want to be next time around.
We've been out of it before it starts.
Yeah, but that's where we want to be next time around. So I'm looking at the team going, I'd be a little bit, the area of the pitch I'd be a little bit concerned actually in terms of the wing backs, and that's probably a little bit worrying because this system that we're playing in terms of back 3 wing backs goes without saying. Your wing backs are absolutely pivotal in terms of how they play.
What?
Exactly. Very important.
They're very important
even.
Essential.
Yeah. So Yeah, so when we first kind of dropped into this kind of system, was going to Seamus and Matt on the right. We got great options there, 2 top class. Now all of a sudden, a little bit down the road, we're looking at Seamus thinking, can't really ask him to play that role now. He's maybe got to play right of a 3. Matt's in a situation I'm a big fan of, unfortunately, just not getting any first team football, which I actually think he's very unfortunate, but that's obviously a conversation for another day. And then flip it over to the other side, the left wing back position. James has done great for us, absolute warrior, unbelievable, can never criticise him. But I think he's coming to a stage now, James, a bit too much of an ask for him in that area of the pitch. We've thrown in Robbie last night. There was a little bit of optimism there in terms of how he played, but obviously you'd have to factor in the calibre opposition. Wasn't tested too much defensively, but showed his quality in the opposition half of the pitch. So I think if we can get that right, I think an option there, Joe, I just spoke about Ogbene high up the pitch, we didn't see him. Wouldn't have minded seeing him in the right wing back position for half an hour second half, because this is a position that young fella plays at club football for Rotherham, has played there, and boy, you can't say he hasn't got the legs to get up and down the pitch. I'd love to have a look at him. There might be an option to throw him there and flip Matt over into a left back position, wing back position. That could be the answer going forward. So these are the things we have to get right. You have to get right. If we can get these right by next March, those wing back positions, get settle on a pairing up front that give us the qualities that we want, who can actually retain possession, when we can pop those balls in, but also who can really stretch teams in behind, hurt teams on the counter attack. Then I'm looking at a team coming forward that can actually be competitive and can scare a couple of teams, particularly the 2-seeded teams next year. Something
which came up after the Scotland game, Gary Breen certainly made the point in the Irish Independent, and others have made it too, is, without rehashing his entire article, but he was basically saying that the midfield 3, we needed more energy in there in the second half as Scotland wrestled control of that game to get out to those fullbacks that as we've talked about, and just the pattern was going Scotland's way, and changes made were too late. Stephen Kenny's in-game management for you, because we're mentioning Ogbene didn't get a look in, Hogan comes on there. Do you tend to look at his substitutions, not just last night, but in general, do you tend to look at his substitutions in a 90 minutes and think, I like how he's managing from the line?
Yeah, but for me, that's a little bit further down the road. For me, that doesn't concern me at the moment. For me, it's more or less the kind of fundamentals that we've been talking about. You got to get that right first. Sure. And then almost that's the next conversation. I think for me, it's like, I'm not overly interested in terms of like individual substitutes or every time of the game. When the basic kind of the fundamentals, the kind of team structure for me is the most important thing. We're still kind of searching a little bit in terms of that. We've got to get that right first.
We're 2 years in. I'm just asking you if you think Stephen Kenny manages a game well inside 90
Jesus.
minutes.
So what? You're gonna list all the substitutions he's made in the last 2 years now, every single game?
No, we don't need to. Just your general sense.
Yeah, I couldn't be overly critical. I mean, last night he's brought Jason Malumbi off for obvious reasons, and he's on the yellow, should have been sent off.
Yeah,
obviously,
lucky.
He's got lucky, so no problem with that. Did he do the right thing taking him off? Yeah, absolutely. But by taking him off, what he had to do, he had to bring in one of our more ball-playing centre midfielder, really, in Conor Hourihane. When Conor came on, he had some wonderful passes, crosses into the box, fantastic. But out of possession, we saw just maybe the small weakness that he has in terms of mobility over the ground, that kind of defensive noose that I'm talking about. You can't blame Stephen for that. He was limited in terms of the options really that he had on the bench. So I couldn't be overly critical in that. Ogbene, I'd say but maybe that's his mindset, Stephen. He thinks no. Obafemi for me and Parrott, I've made my decision. These are the two, and I want to keep him on the pitch for as long as possible. Now I'm thinking slightly different, thinking not quite sure about that front. I'd love to see Ogbene. I think potentially it's Ogbene and somebody else, but that's how I'm thinking. If Stephen's thinking slightly different in terms of no, I'm hanging my hat on these two up front, so I want to get them together and get as much time on the pitch, develop that relationship. Well, that makes sense. You know what I mean?
I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not leading the pitchforks here saying, we've got an issue in this department of Stephen's management. But it's funny, because we spent so much of the 2 years talking about the big picture and is Stephen the right man, and are we...
Yeah.
We never actually talk about some of those particulars.
Well, I think you're right.
It was interesting when Gary Breen made that point on
Well, you'd have to
Saturday.
tell me specifics. You'd have to tell me, well, remember that game, 80 minutes in, he made that. What was he thinking?
And to be fair,
we can talk about it. I don't think you can throw a blanket.
I don't have the chart sheet here. It's never something which occurred to me before this weekend, so maybe it's not an issue, but it was...
I think it is a factor. It is a big talk about Garrett Southgate for the past couple of years as well, but it's kind of like a little bit of a niche argument almost. I think it is a fact. I think it is important. Those decisions are absolutely massive. You're right. in terms of the manager having a good eye for the game, getting a sense of what's required at any given moment, particularly in those coming towards the end of your last 10-15 minutes where the defending are kind of chasing the game. Those kind of tactical changes which are made I think are very significant, are massive, but that's not my focus at the moment.
That's
for me,
fine.
that's a little bit further down the road.
I was just asking in case you did have a strong opinion one way or the other, but if you don't have a feel for it, that's totally fine. Don't be getting mad at me. You know I love you. What about Bazunu and the goals? Should he have done better for any of them in your opinion?
I'm sure you've asked him, yeah, and I'd be glad to hear that, because I think he strikes him as a lad with very high standards, almost as if he expects to save everything.
Yeah.
That's thrown at him. You could make an argument that first, could he got a stronger hand to maybe push it around the post? Maybe so. I think it's very different that ball bounces in front of you as a goalkeeper to immediately assess how quickly it's going to come off the turf. You got to be careful you don't get too clever with it, miss it totally, and it ends up in the back of your net. So no, I wouldn't be overly critical of that. Hit the post, came back, and
it's
whatever.
Good finish then, to be fair.
Yeah, it's a great finish, I thought, after that. Second goal as well for me, he shaped it well, good, slightly underneath him. I'm not, again, I wouldn't be overly critical. Look at the bigger picture there. Am I overly concerned about Gavin Bazunu going forward? Absolutely not.
No,
a top class goalkeeper. They've got a top class number two.
Him and Kelleher. Do you have a feel? Do you have a feel for who's going to come out on top in that decade long?
I think that could go either way. It could be like one injury which keeps one of them out, the other comes in and does well and stays in the team. It could literally be that. Yeah, that's just the way it's going to work. For them. Even Kelleher must be not like devastated, like, you know what I mean. But in terms of the level that he's operating at, the qualities that he has, he's having to play second fiddle, isn't he, to Gavin over the last period of time. That's just the way it is. He's got to suck it up, keep doing what he's doing, and his opportunity will present itself. Not necessarily because there's going to be a massive drop off in Gavin Bazunu, but just more or less, I think, what I'm talking about in terms of maybe injury takes Gavin out, he steps in, and maybe Gavin's going to have to be patient now for the next year and a half after that. But great for us.
Yes, for sure. What was your sense in the stadium, by the way, if it had stayed 2-2? It wouldn't have been boos, I don't think. Grumbles would have been.
Oh, if buts in.
Come on.
What if they had got the third goal of fourth and we'd have lost 5? We're going to talk about what we'd have lost the game 5-2.
Boos then.
Let's go.
Booze then. If we'd lost the game, booze.
Why in a hypothetical situation that never happened? There's plenty more to be talking about, Joe, rather than we must be struggling for a conversation.
Well, look what I'm dealing with.
No, I got a bit of it. I think it's still there out there, even in terms of the attendance last night. I heard 45,000 and I thought, oof, this could be a struggle. Off the back of the fact, it was a nothing game to lay. I know they could have won, they could have won. There's a bit of jeopardy there. If we lose, we go. But for me, it was never, that was never realistic. It was never going to happen. So, but fair play to the crowd. How they came out in big numbers. It wasn't far off. You said 41,000.
They got 41 because Dan McDonald was in here on Monday and he was saying, "Gee, I'm not sure about Stephen making a big play of the fact we 44,000 because we'll do well to get. We might get 30. Yeah. So to get 41 was.
So that's a little bit of an indicator in terms of. And you get a bit of a sense of us walking through town again to the game. Yeah. Last night, you just get a bit of a sense of it around the place, the pubs, and people are still up. They're kind of invested. They're behind it where we are, which is
for my part. I'll answer the hypothetical.
Well, we all are, aren't we?
I don't think even at 2-2, I don't think there would have been booing. I think the stadium is so behind them. I don't think there might have been a bit of a grumble, but
I think so.
No pressure.
I think you're probably right. I think it's bigger picture. I think everybody accepts. Look, Stephen and the managers are going to be in place for the next for the qualifiers next March, which takes us up to October, November when they actually finishes. I can never short of the schedule.
November and then playoffs.
It's going to be quite. It's going to be quite condensed.
Well, March, November. That's it.
Pretty much. So I think everybody accepts. He's going to be he's going to be in place for those games. In my view, rightly so. So to the largest thing, let's get behind. Now, when I say get behind them, that doesn't mean suddenly we have to be like, we got to agree with everything the manager says. And if we're a little bit unsure, we're not allowed to voice an opinion or anything like that. So you've referenced Damien and maybe Brian and one or two others and Gary Bear. That's absolutely fine. That's all good for me. As long as it comes from the right place, which I think it is. Because I think we're all invested in it. We all want Ireland to do well. We all want Ireland to be successful and qualify for championships. And I know those people that you're talking about. And I know that's the case. We're all rowing in the same direction. So people who voice, an opinion and are maybe a little bit critical, that's par for the course. As long as it's coming from a good place, and by and large, I think it is. So I've no problem with that, and I'm the same. I suppose I have been a little bit. Some tone, I think, maybe sometimes can play a part. Joe Kenny. You saw Damon there, like very, whoosh, all in, like, you know what I mean? If you just ratchet it down a little bit in terms of the tone and maybe some of your language, you make the same point, but it doesn't seem
it's funny,
as critical. Do you know what I mean?
Someone said to me on of the comments he made on Saturday after the Scotland game, they said, I read the quotes and they seem very fair.
Yeah,
but it can just.
No, I agree.
I
agree absolutely. He makes the point about the 10 minutes. You can't. Yeah, absolutely, it's part of the game. You have to recognise that. But for me, that 10 minutes, say the 2 goals we gave away, we've kind of dissected them a little bit. The 2 goals. So for me, that's very easily rectified.
They're not trends.
Yeah, the small detail that I'm talking about. That's kind of almost like in the kind of individual qualities that I'm talking about. So, but so that. You can better that very easy, so that doesn't worry me too much. The Conor Horan sideways pass, when's that going to happen? Conor's probably never going to play another pass like that again. So I that doesn't like get me too down and too depressed. Like, you know what I mean? That can be quickly rectified. So yeah, there's always a bit of optimism there with me, and the optimism comes from the fact that there's more to come. This isn't perfect what we're watching at the moment, but from what I'm saying, but that's easily said. But you got to tap into it. You got to recognise the areas of the pitch where you can do better and implement it and improve upon it. And if we're doing that, then I can see the improvement coming in progression. And by the time those games comes next March, we're going to be in a far better situation. What I'd be a little bit worried about was maybe if the management staff were stood in front of the players after that game last night saying, lads, apart from that 10 minutes, those couple of mistakes, that's perfect. That's what we're after. I can't ask for any more. How you played, your decision making, how you passed the ball, decisions which you made was absolutely. Now that'd be a worry for me, because I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying a lot of the time the decision making in possession wasn't what I would have wanted to see. So that'd be the worry.
You're hoping that when he talks about an exceptional performance, that's just for the media, and you're hoping in the dressing room.
I think so.
Do you suspect he is, or do you think he thinks actually that was exceptional?
Well, that's the thing for me. That'd be a little bit of a worry, but I've never been in that position. I've never managed, certainly not at that level. But I think the general principles are the same, no matter who you're managing or coaching. When you go in front of the camera, you have to be aware of the impact what your words are going to have. First and foremost, the dressing room, Joe, not the journos in front of you, not the public at home. To a certain extent, it's the players in the dressing room. So it's important, a little bit positive, even at times. That doesn't mean you can't be a little bit critical at times, but again, it's in terms of your language, how you present it out there. I think you can be. So that little bit of over-the-top positivity and backing the players, I can get that a little bit, because the dressing room was the most important dynamic. So that's absolutely fine. But privately, I'd like to think if Stephen's sitting down with Keith and the rest of the coaching staff over the next couple of weeks and they're dissecting the game, which they will do, they'll be looking at thinking, right, this is how we can do better. Now we can get that ball forward quicker into our centre forwards earlier, and that's how we can improve. That's how we can get penetration higher up the pitch, create more chances, goals, etc. The defensive stuff, I wouldn't have too much of an issue. I know he referenced the second goal, but I wouldn't worry about that. Yeah, so it's all of that really, isn't it? Stuff we're really not privy to. Yeah.
One last very quick one. Big disappointment last night in Tel Aviv. Am I right in thinking you would like to have known, or you'd be curious as to know whether Jim Crawford and Stephen Kenny played around with the idea of some of the lads from senior level coming to Tel Aviv for the evening, just because the benefit of getting to a major 21s tournament would have been so great? We don't know. We don't know.
We'll never know. Yeah, flying the wall. I'd be amazed if that conversation wasn't had when the Israel dates were announced. Obviously, they coincide with the 2 senior games, but we know the talent that we have that's in the senior squad that's eligible to play. Half a dozen the players, probably one or two less last night.
I think Israel took 3, didn't they?
Israel took 3 out of their senior squad. A lot of talk obviously about in terms of development of their underage structures and developing players, and tournament experience is a big thing, isn't we? Hear a lot of it, but there is value to it, to be fair. And I was never lucky enough to play tournament football at that age, but I always remember when I played, like Robbie Duffers and a few of the lads, Alan Quinn and stuff, who came in, who played at the under 17, under 19, played in those kind of European championships, Asia tournaments and stuff, and had kind of some success. And I must admit, listening to them I always felt, not a little bit of envy, but in a good way. The way they used to talk about it, their eyes lit up. And I think if you ask them now in terms of memories from football and all they've achieved, those players in particular, Duffers and Robbie I'm talking about, they'll always reference those tournaments, not in terms of the memories that I gave them, but in terms of development, confidence, all those type of things. And I think that's even multiplied at under 21 level. That's elite competition. Now, the squad that went there next summer to play, it may not have had 4 or 5 of them players that we're talking about already. They may have progressed and remained with the senior squad, but to take a group of players to have the experience of playing that competition would have been invaluable. Now, we're all agreed on that. So the argument is, could 2 or 3 of those players within the senior squad last night, if they'd have been dropped in to Jim for that game last night, as close as it was, the fine margins of that game, would it have made it? Jason and I, Michael Oberfame, saw the goal that he scored last night. If he'd have been available for that, if he'd have played 45 minutes in that game, Jason and I, his quality breaking out, his energy levels in midfield, we'll never know. And it's an easy thing to say, but I'm not saying it now. Even when, like a month ago, I was talking about this will be very interesting, and it couldn't have been an easy decision, but it must have been a conversation between Jim and Steve, and ultimately they decided no. Jim might have said, look, no, I don't want you dropping players in. I know you'll need them for the Scotland game, but 2 days before the second leg of the Israel game, it's too late. I want to stay loyal to the players who've been together for the 8-9 days previously. It might be a little disruption there, players coming in terms of the atmosphere with him. No, let me stick with me original squad, and that might have been it. Conversation over. But there's always that temptation, isn't it? Looking at, I think there was even a situation during the qualifying campaign, some of the points that the 21s dropped. I think was Bosnia, one of the games they dropped early on. And we had a senior game, I think it was with Qatar. Was it Qatar?
The friendly, yeah.
And we had 6 of the young lads sat in the stand, I think, that night. So, but it is an interesting one. It's not right or wrong, but we know other European teams, Israel done it last night. The bigger European teams, France, Germany, no qualm about dropping their players.
As I'm listening to you, I think it might have been worth doing.
Really stress importance on those tournaments, don't they? Now, I understand going into the Scotland game, we win the Scotland game, we beat Armenia, we could come second in the group. And there's ramifications further down the road. So, absolutely, I could understand that, keeping the whole squad intact. But once that result had gone against us, the Armenia game, in terms of importance, had really dropped off. The nature of the second leg, 1-1 from the first game going into.
No,
even then, I'm thinking, could even couple of the lads, Dublin Airport, whoosh, fly over to tell her. All it needs is a little extra time, people touring, that little bit of, we had a couple I'm going to watch the game, I haven't had a chance to look at the 21 game. I listen to Darren Frett, he was in bits, wasn't he, on the radio kind of commentating. We conceded a lot of chance, but we had a few ourselves, maybe could, would that have made a difference, those players? Anyways, point to score, we're going around the circles, we'll never know. Devastated for the players, and that'll hurt. That will absolutely hurt. And I tell you what, that won't heal either in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. Those players are going to have to carry that around with them.
It's your only chance. There is no tomorrow. Father Time moves and you're not under 21 anymore. So it's. But
the good thing, what I'd say, the 21s, Joe, apart from the lads, some of the lads who've stepped up, watched the game in Tala, the first leg, really encouraged what I've seen there, and some of the individual quality good sprinkled around the pitch as well.
Do you know what though? It's a funny world, because last night the Malaysian Marvels, I didn't know that was their nickname, but Brian Kerr's team from Malaysia.
Have you just made that up?
It was
Malaysian monsters. It was monsters about it. Marvels. Superheroes. They're leaning towards the superhero.
No, that's the nickname apparently. I hadn't seen it before ever. But last night I did. So they had never got their caps.
Oh, is that right?
The previous FAI were busy doing other things, as you know, Kenny. And so the current FAI are trying to catch up on certain business. So they had them all at the game last night to give them their caps 25 years on.
Didn't say it on the pitch.
They didn't give it to them on the pitch, but nice private event. I'd say it was great for the team. But what I was surprised when I was reading, Dan McDonald had the stat of that Malaysian Marvel group.
Yeah.
Only 2 of them in Duff and Glenn Crowe, and he had the 2 caps. Only 2 of them senior Irish football. And the Argentinian team who beat them just about 1-0. Guess how many of the Argentinian group played senior Argentinian football?
I'd imagine maybe 10 to 12.
10.
Yeah.
You kind of wonder what happened there. Anyway, we're out of time.
Oh, you finished on a right downer there, Joe. You built it up, the lads getting their caps and feel good, and then whoosh,
they wake up this morning.
Took us straight back down again.
Thanks so much, appreciate it.
Yeah, all good.
Football Not the Ball brought to you by Sky. All the football you have in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, it's the North London Derby. Watch Arsenal versus Spurs this Saturday. Live only on BT Sport.